Hello, everybody. My name is Becky Draper. I'm an Ayurveda health coach and Vedic astrologer, and I help people align with the rhythms and cycles in nature. And today I'm going to talk to you about what I think is the biggest missing link in healthcare and health and wellness, and something you really don't hear very many people talking about, especially people in the mainstream or like doctors. It seems to be something that gets kind of like brushed under the rug as just silly thinking or nonsense. But actually, I think it holds a lot more weight than people want to give it. And I think a lot of people are starting to come around and be more and more open to the idea that one of the biggest things that I think is that we no longer are connecting to nature. And in the book, Wild Edge of Sorrow, the author, Francis Weller, talks about how as a collective, we have 5 main griefs. And one of those griefs is that we feel this like deep sense of sadness that we're no longer connected to nature. And it's one of the reasons that we have this like deep feeling of loneliness. And he talks about how when we lived on the land, we would like look to the birds and look to the trees and the plants, and we would study them and we would watch what they would do, and we would align our behavior to their behavior. So we would learn from the plants and animals, and then we would align with them. And now we tend to kind of not even consider ourselves part of nature. We think that we're not an animal and that we're not connected. And maybe we know like deep down we are, but there's still this like psychological thing that like we're kind of above that. And I'm not saying that we need to like move out of our homes and not live our modern lives, but many of us are feeling this like loss from that connection that we once had. And so, of course, one of the ways you can combat that feeling is to go out into nature and spend time doing what you can, like putting your hands into earth, hiking, and doing things like that, which is great. And I hope everyone does that every single day. But I'm going to talk about 3 other things that you can do to align with nature that you may not have thought of. So, number one, we want to align with nature on like a yearly level. And so this is where we would be looking to the seasons. And typically we have 4 seasons. In Ayurveda, we talk about 3 seasons. We talk about the Kapha time of the year, which is like spring. This is earth and water. This is when things feel kind of heavy and muddy. And so during this time, we want to like do the opposite. So we want to eat lighter food. We would want to have our food cooked so that it's easy to digest. We want our food warm because it's cold. And we would probably want to do a little bit more activity since things are heavy. We want to like burn through that heaviness. And so we're kind of aligning just with the season itself. So every time we go into a new season, we want to think about like, okay, what am I going to eat? And how am I going to align with this time of the year? And so springtime, we're thinking about eating foods that are in season, citrus fruit, strawberries, and then bitter greens and asparagus. So we're eating more of the foods that come up in the springtime, and then we're cooking them just a little bit because remember it's cold and we want our food just slightly cooked so it's a little bit warmer. And then it's because we have that heavy feeling, it's hard to digesting, so we want to eat a little bit lighter and we don't want to eat as much. And so we're just thinking about how to align with that. Then when we go into the summer, which is the pitta time of the year, then we are probably going to eat more carbohydrates because we need more energy to get through the day. We may at this time be able to eat more of the raw foods and salads because our digestion is going to be able to handle it, and it's going to have the endurance to keep digesting the food as we move through the longer days. And then also we would be eating cooler food because it's really hot. And then when we get to fall, that's when we go into the Vata time of the year. And this is air and ether when things get kind of light. And this is also includes like the first part of winter, and Kapha includes the last part of winter. So Vata, things are starting to get airy and light, and so we need heavier foods. And this is when we would want to eat like the Atkins diet, like protein, squashes, potatoes, root vegetables, things like that. And these are also in season during this time of the year. And so that's how we align with like the year. And so that's one suggestion. And many of us don't really do that. And what I love about eating this way is that your diet is always changing. And as soon as you're sick of one type of food, you get to start eating another type of food. And I will always eat like, the staples like tacos and taco salad and like spaghetti or lasagna, like whatever your staples are. I always throw these things in throughout the year. I'm just changing my diet a little bit. We don't have to like be extreme and think like, well, I can't eat pasta in the fall or in the spring because that's too heavy. And it's like, no, you could do that one day a week. It's fine. So really this isn't about being perfect. It's just about being conscientious about it. And that's part of aligning with the seasons, is just being aware of them. And then next we would align our rhythm with the month. And the way that we do that is we would follow the moon. And the moon moves around the earth and goes through all the constellations between 28 to 30 days. And so when we're looking at like how to align on this schedule when the moon is new, and we would be like starting a new beginning, and we'd be thinking about like what we're trying to manifest. And then when we get to the full moon, this is when we are feeling more extroverted. So we would want to go out and be around people and celebrate. And when the moon is full, this is also when our digestion is better. And so we can eat heavier foods during this time. And then when we move back towards the dark moon and the new moon, we are losing the moon's energy. So we're starting to feel a little bit more of that vata energy, like scattered and ungrounded. And then we're starting to go back inward into that introverted space that we're at during the new moon. And this is when our digestion is a little bit weaker. And so this is when we want to eat foods that are soft and easy to digest, or like foods you could put into a bowl. And so if you eat your like during the full moon and you eat like your burger or that like one thing that you just really love to have once in a while, then you're going to fulfill that craving during the time when your stomach and your digestion can handle that craving. And then that way, when you get to the new moon, instead of craving that hamburger that you didn't have during the full moon, you'll be craving something more nutritious because you did splurge during the full moon. And so this is not about restrictions. It's more about just aligning your eating habits with the moon and where the phase of the moon is. And then if you do want to have, in fact, you should definitely treat yourself during the full moon. And then that way, when the new moon comes, you'll be craving more of those easy to digest foods. And that's another way that we align with nature. And I highly suggest going outside in the evening or in the morning whenever you can see the moon, and just taking a moment to acknowledge the moon and just keeping track of where it's at if you're in the waning or waxing phase. And then lastly, we would align our day with the sun. And so this is probably like the oldest method of all time, aligning your day with the sun. And I'm sure many of you already do a lot of this because we wake up with the sun and we go to bed with the sun, right? But another way that we can align our day with the sun is we can eat our biggest meal at noon. When the sun is the highest in the sky, this is when our digestion is the strongest. And so by eating that big meal at noon, we are fulfilling like all of the nutrients that we need and the calories that we need for the day. And this is when we need those calories because we still have like the rest of the day to get through. And so a lot of people in our culture will skip breakfast, eat like a tiny lunch, like snack for lunch, and then they'll go home and have their big meal for dinner. And that is not when we need the calories because we've already gone through the day, and now we're at dinner time. We don't really need those calories anymore because we're going to be like unwinding. And so we need less calories at dinner and we need more calories at lunch. And then that way we have the energy to get through the day. And then when we get to dinner, if we did eat those like bigger calories at lunch, then we're not going to be craving some big meal at dinner. You're going to be more likely to crave something smaller and more simple if you had like a big lunch. And so Then, if you did have a smaller dinner, this gives yourself more time to digest your food before you go to bed, too. And again, you don't really need the calories at this time of night. So, again, I'm going to go over all of the ways that we integrate this together. So, when we're looking at the seasons, we're looking at like what types of food we're going to be eating. And then when we're looking at the moon, we're looking at like when we're going to want to eat more of like the fattening foods that we crave. Maybe you like to have some french fries once in a while. This is when you would have that. And then the new moon is when we want to eat a little bit more simple. And then when we're looking at the sun and aligning with the day, we want to just eat the biggest meal at noon. So do the best you can to not skip lunch. And instead of having a small lunch, like actually go in and have a big lunch. And some people will say, like, I feel kind of tired after lunch, and that's why I don't like to eat a big meal. And you might feel tired for a minute, and that's a totally normal feeling. But typically, you'll be able to get out of that sluggish feeling within about 20 minutes. You could go for a quick walk right after you eat. You could even do like a little bit of a nap where you just lay on your left hand side, because when you lay on your left side, you're digesting your food better. So you could even take like a 20-minute nap on your left hand side. And this can like, once you get up from that, you can feel like, okay, you might feel a little drowsy for a second, but that like gives you that second wind for the day. Or you can this might even be the time that you have caffeine, like have a green tea or something that kind of wakes you up and gets your metabolism going a little bit faster. And so there's lots of ways that you can kind of counterbalance this heavy feeling. But I promise you, once your body gets used to it, you're gonna love having that big meal at lunch, because you're not gonna be going through the rest of your day hungry or the rest of your day depleted. And when you get to dinner, you're not gonna be like famished and just needing to eat whatever's there. So those are my suggestions of aligning more with the cycles of nature. And I really think that this is a big missing link from our health. Like everyone talks about nutrition in a way of like calories in, calories out, vitamins in, vitamins out. But we don't really talk about the way that our body was built to take these calories in. And we don't talk a lot about these like clock genes that are just naturally built within us. And so I would love to hear if you have tried any of these methods, or if you think that this is all just hogwash. And if you want to go deeper into Ayurveda and do an Ayurveda health coaching, then please message me and I'll see you in the next video.